Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King. And the goal of this podcast, just like the intro said, is to be able to create ecosystems where people thrive, create these environments where people thrive. Interestingly, today is a special day. Today is 100th day in a row that we've been podcasting. A few months ago, I set out for a goal to do 100 days straight, and today is our official 100th day. So if I had the applause or some celebrations, if you're on the live right now, just send us some love. Send us some love. But one of the things that I've recognized in the last 100 days that we've been showing up consistently podcasting is that you can do so much more when you set intention. When you set intentions, when you have a powerful why, when you are truly committed to impact, when you are truly committed to making a difference, and when you put a system in place and have people around you, an environment, again, that hold you accountable to that standard, you can do some amazing things. And I'm so excited that we've even gotten to this point because I felt like at day 30 or 35, I was gassed. I felt gassed. And then I started to research, I started to read, I started to do the work. And then it started to give me all of these insights that I started to get throughout this whole process of the work that we're doing. And today's conversation is going to be very intentional. I'm going to take you behind the scenes of a recent client intake call of a new client that we brought on to the Culture Lab. And most people underestimate the power of a first conversation. But in fundraising, a single intake call can set the stage for millions of dollars in impact. And today I want to take you inside one of those calls. All right. So I want you to take notes. I want you to prepare yourself. And if you are a mission driven organization, if you are a leader in a school, whether on the K-12 or the higher education level, if you are running a nonprofit organization, that this conversation is most likely for you. And in this episode, you'll hear a real client intake conversation. And as it unfolds, and I'm going to unpack key questions, key challenges, and insights that help mission-driven organizations and school leaders raise their first $1 million. And you'll get a behind-the-scenes look at how our 4P framework of preparing, proving, partnering, and propelling turns that uncertainty that we often have at the beginning into strategy, and how very intentional conversations can create lasting impact. And that lasting impact starts from day one. So by the end of this conversation, I want you to do one thing. I want you to have actionable takeaways for every first encounter that you have, but then also actionable takeaways that you can utilize in your nonprofit, in your mission-driven organization, or in your school today that could be able to set you up for being able to raise millions of dollars within your organization. All right. So in our process, we have our strategy call, we have a discovery call when we ask you many, many questions. And what the discovery call is for is to be able to really see if we're a good fit for you, and ultimately if you're a good fit for us. Because I am not the business owner that wants to just bring on all clients that don't necessarily fit just to take your money. I believe in integrity, and I've been in that space before where we were focused so much on client acquisition, and we weren't able to truly fulfill that engagement or that partnership as effectively as possible and be able to operate from a sense of excellence. So I do believe that the riches are in the niches. And I believe when you can get really clear on who you are as an organization, it gives you the power to be able to work with people and create impact. Because I also believe that conviction is more powerful than content. You can create content, you can read all the books, you can have all the theory, all the philosophy, but until you're actually convicted and be able to move people from just engagement or insight to impact and transformation, that's where I believe separates great businesses from just mediocre ones that are collecting paychecks on a day-to-day basis. All right. So we always begin our intake process with a worksheet. Now, years ago, this was a form that we would have people fill out digitally, and they would invest their money, they would sign the agreement, and they would be required to go through this form by themselves on their own prior to our official onboarding call. And years later, I changed that model because we wanted to first be able to make this more interactive. We wanted to guide them through the process. And it's just a lot for someone to sit down for 60 to 90 minutes filling out a form and they don't understand the context. And it's not one of those forms that are going to make you feel good if you don't have the answers. And we didn't want NA, we didn't want not applicable, we didn't want blanks. We wanted to be able to take them through an immersive experience to expose the gaps, but then also provide them the encouragement, provide them with the support, provide them with the foundation to be able to set them up to be successful as an organization. So we always start with first the name. We want to first thank you for being a part of this process and for allowing us to be able to partner with you on this amazing step of your journey. And in the NP Accelerator, it's a 12-week program that takes individuals, leaders, through a 4-step process where we're preparing, we are helping you prove, we're helping you partner, and we're helping you propel those relationships forward. But in a nutshell, it's helping you ultimately strategize, secure gifts, and scale your fundraising efforts. In a nutshell. All right. So on this first intake call, we want to be able to understand where you are in your process. So if you are a leader, I want to take you through this process as well. And I'm going to use some examples from an individual that we just took through this process earlier on today, because I felt like her insights were amazing. And I felt like it gave us some insights that we can be able to potentially change in our process, but then also information for you to be able to utilize as well. All right, let's get to it. So we always want to be able to start with an organization overview. So what is your name? How many years have you been founded? And then what is your mission statement? Because the reason that we want to start there is that's the foundation. So if your mission is to educate the community about health disparities and dealing with issues of mental and physical wellness, then your vision statement has to align with that mission statement. So then she continued and said her vision statement was to help underserved communities to become well, educating through workshops, events. We are educating our members about resilience, coping skills, diabetes, hypertension, and all the health disparities that are in the community, which is great. But what does that look like? If you are creating a vision statement, what I would recommend you do is actually write out results. Like, what is the vision? How many people do you want to impact? Where do you want to take this organization? What are the things that you want to do? Like helping underserved communities become well. What does that look like? Define what well looks like. Educating through workshops. What are you educating them on? We are educating them about resilience, coping skills, diabetes, hypertension, all the health. So are we just an education company, just creating awareness? Or are we trying to create the awareness in order for us to be able to achieve a specific result? That's what I look at as a vision statement, especially if we're in a mission-driven organization or a nonprofit organization. All right. So then we focus on, all right, number of staff members, current number of volunteers, but then communities or populations that you serve. So this individual that we were taking through the intake process communicated simply, people that are at or below the poverty line. And I pushed back. I said, well, what does that look like? Because I don't really know, to be honest with you. I don't know what behind or below the poverty line looks like. Is that $20,000 a year? Is that $30,000 a year as household income? Is that 40,000? And excuse my ignorance, I probably should have looked it up before I even started the live. But the reality of it is that I didn't know at that time. And you want to be as clear as possible when you're communicating your specific organizational goals, your specific organizational needs, especially the populations that your organization serves on a day-to-day basis. So what we communicated, she said, people that are below the poverty line, the income does not meet the needs in order for them to provide for themselves and their families. Well, that's a lot of people, especially in today's economy. So we wanted to be able to get clear. So then once we got clear, we understood that it's under $60,000 a year in household income. Due to the cost of living increasing, these people aren't able to sustain themselves. Now, that's a completely different person versus someone that's making $20,000 a year. And as we got through the process, it was beautiful because Just remember that one statement, because I continue to communicate to one of our clients that, look, the niches are in the riches. I want us to be as clear, crystal clear as possible on who it is that we're serving. And this is why. The next section on this list is the programs and the services offered. In order for us to be able to create programming, we have to understand the types of people that we're creating programming for. In order for us to understand the types of people that we're creating programming for, we have to understand from a mission standpoint and vision standpoint where we're going as an organization and what problems our mission and or what problems our organization is solving. All of this is a build on. It builds upon the next. So if we're not clear on our mission, then we're not able to fully be clear on where we're going in our vision. If we're not clear on our vision, then we're not probably going to be clear on the types of people and populations that we're serving. If we're not clear on the types of people that we're serving, we're not going to be clear in what these people truly need in order for us to be able to create programs and services. So again, on this conversation, one of the things that got exposed is I asked a simple question. I was like, list your main programs as your programming services or initiatives that you're currently doing. And then she came back and she said, well, and then I prefaced it. I said, well, I want to know, what are your signature workshops? Because she mentioned workshops earlier on in the conversation. And I wanted to know, what are her signature workshops? And she said, that's kind of still a work in progress. I'm not sure. Mind you, this is the founder and the executive director of this organization. And this is not by any means trying to expose or to put her out there at all. Like, this is an active client that we're working with. And this is why the intake process is so important. And this, for my executive directors out there and for my nonprofit executives and for my organizational leaders, we have to get clear in what it is that we're doing. And programming is important. Services are important, but I don't look at it as just services and programs for us to be able to run. I look at it as solutions that we are offering to be able to solve a specific problem or a group of problems for a specific population of people. So as we understood and as we continue to talk, the programs, the workshops, the events were still a work in progress. Now, she was doing something and kind of a multitude of things, but in a nutshell, the programming was not in alignment with what the mission's statement was or the type of people that she was working with. So then I continued in the conversation. I let this be known in the conversation, but we continued throughout the conversation. So the next piece to the puzzle was, how do you measure your organization's impact? All right. And the deeper that we got into the questions, and the deeper that you're probably going to get into the questions, what you'll realize is that if you don't have enough on the front end, you're not going to have anything on the back end. All right. So how do you measure your organization's impact is a real question, whether that's metrics, whether that's surveys, whether that's stories, or any other way to evaluate your organization's success. There's so many organizations out here. There's so many nonprofits, there's so many businesses, there's so many entrepreneurs, there's so many products and services and solutions. But what separates you versus everyone else is the data. It's the data that is telling a story of how you're transforming the population of people that are experiencing negative impacts from that problem that they are currently experiencing. All right. So when you think about your impact story, how are you measuring it? Are you measuring it? And if you are measuring it, does it actually align with clear measurables that show that we are leading to this vision that we said earlier in the statement that we gave? Are the ways that you are measuring in alignment with your specific mission statement? Because if not, then we have to do a little bit of deep diving, and we have to do some back end work before we can actually start producing the results in front of our donors. This is all of the behind the scenes work that has to be done before we start having conversations with donors, before we start building relationships with organizations, before we start trying to recruit people to all of these various things. We have to understand, what is our mission? What is our vision? Who is the population that we serve? based upon this population that we serve, well, how are we serving those people? What are the programs? What are the services that we're doing in order to serve these people? And then based upon how we're serving these people, how are we measuring that these programs are actually in fact effective? And that's one of the conversations that I asked when she was mentioning one of the events that she put on. I said, well, how are you measuring the impact of this event? And she mentioned that she was creating awareness to cope with various challenges and depression and anxiety and these mental fog. And I said, well, how are you actually measuring that? How are you measuring that? And there wasn't an answer. See, we have to stop misusing the word impact, because if we're not measuring it, and y'all challenge me on here, can it actually be impactful if we're not measuring it? How do we know that we actually made an impact if we have no way of measuring that an impact even was made? So that was question number 9. We're measuring impact. Question 10 was all about goals and barriers. So question 10 was, what are the top 3 organizational goals for the next month? Now, when you think about everything that we've already discussed and everything that we've already covered, if we're not clear on our mission, it's even more challenging for us to be able to create a clear vision statement. If we're not clear on our vision, then it's challenging for us to understand the population of people that we're taking on this journey to be able to impact their lives. If we're not clear on the people and the populations that we serve, then it's also challenging for us to be able to understand what types of programs and offerings are we providing these people that align with the mission, vision, and values of the organization. Okay. Then if we're not clear on that, then we have no way of measuring success. We're just putting on events, bringing on people, work, instead of creating intentional experiences that are designed to get a specific piece of feedback so that we can use that feedback as a story to be able to share our mission and have people champion our mission moving forward. So we have to understand our impact. So then step 10, or question 10, all about goals and barriers, is what are the top 3 organizational goals for the next 12 months? And then this, my friend, is where it all comes out. So the first step was sustainability. And what sustainability look like? And again, this is one thing that I always ask. If you say a word, I ask you, what does that look like? How do you define it? How do you define sustainability? How do you define clarity? How do you define financial growth? Like, what is, again, it goes back to that measurable. What does that success measure look like? Because sustainability for me and my organization at this point may be completely different than how I would have defined it when I first started the organization. Okay. So I asked her, what does sustainability look like? She says she wants to make it where companies look at the books and the paperwork, they see the impact, the progress, and also believe in investing and sponsoring the various programming. Now that is sustainability in regards to her definition. We can work with that because now I understand what is the activity that will have to take place in order for us to get this outcome. And that's one of the questions that I always ask when I'm working with people, or always am thinking through. Well, what is the activity that has to take place in order for us to be able to achieve this level of outcome? So if it's make it where companies look at the books and paperwork and they see the impact, well, that means that we have to create data. That means that we have to have pre-tests and post-tests. That means that we have to get clear on the types of experiences that we are creating. That means that we have to understand the types of companies that care about this specific thing. Okay. So now what is the activity that you need to contribute to that will be able to get you to that outcome? And then number 2 was clarity. She wants people to see clearly what she is doing. That requires us to do some deep diving. That requires us to be able to build a mission statement, what I call a mission message statement. That requires us to understand and pull back the curtain on what the problem is that we're solving, or what problem we're solving as an organization. And then she said financial growth. She wants to be able to hire additional talent. And then she wants to be able to put herself on payroll consistently, not just do an owner's draw from the business. See, these are real conversations that are happening. And if this is you, you probably need the NP Accelerator program. You probably need a strategy. you probably need a way, a coach, a form of an accountability, some strategy to be able to help you secure your first gift. You need somebody to be able to help you build your team. You need somebody to help you build your strategy profile. You need somebody to help you build your donor profile, build your list, have these conversations, secure your first gift, and then understand the donor engagement process after. You need the NP Accelerator program. And if that sounds like you, then you need to click the link in the show notes and be able to schedule a discovery call. Now, once we understood this, the last question, one of the final questions that I asked her is, what are the barriers that are currently preventing you or your organization from achieving these goals? Now, this is important because I think a lot of times we understand where we're going, but it's challenging for us to really be able to understand what is in the way of us getting there. So when I ask this question, my goal is to be able to understand a few things. Is it a funding issue? Is it like a staff limitation issue? Is it a capacity issue? Is it a community engagement, a marketing issue, or is it a programming design issue? So what this allows me to do is to understand, like, all right, well, this is where we need to potentially focus first, and we may need to prepare this organization in a different way or customize the experience for them. But she gave us what she needed. She says staffing capacity. People don't want to work unless there's money involved. There's not processes in place. She wants people to not just feel like they're volunteers all the time. She wants to be able to invest in people. And she wants to make it where people clearly understand what she's doing online. That's good. That's storytelling. Then she said, from a leadership capacity standpoint, she has always done everything. And she wants to be able to have the necessary support to be able to create measurable success and achievements within her organization. She wants to learn more, she wants to grow more, and she wants to be able to be in the position to receive gifts. She wants to grow her organization. And the crazy thing is, this is a woman that has been doing this for years, that has received $17,000 in funding from one organization, another $10,000, another $41,000, another $25,000, another $5,000, another $7,500, and then have done smaller scale fundraising initiatives that have raised hundreds of dollars consistently over a period of time. This is somebody that's doing the work, somebody that's full-time in this space, but needs a little bit more push to be able to get to those bigger dollars. This is the ideal client. And if this is you, then schedule some time with us so that we can be able to just understand, where are you in your process? Maybe there's some shifts, maybe there's some kinks that we could potentially work out, and maybe we could pull you through the 12-week accelerator program so that you could be able to get strategized, get focused, get aligned, so that you could be able to secure those major gifts. All right. So then the last few questions were, what fundraising or partnerships challenges have you experienced? And then what kind of support do you need? And what we recognize in a lot of the work that we do is that fundraising strategy, team building, marketing, and communications are the top three. But leadership development is the one that's always overlooked, that we want to be able to empower you to be able to invest in, because that's leading to the lack of funding. That's leading to limited staff capacity as well. So once we go through the intake, then we get really, really intentional with setting goals. And again, this is from the exact conversation that we just had about an hour ago with a client of ours that really inspired me to just come on and talk about the insights from this call and what my recommendations would be for you if you are that leader, if you are that organizational leader that is trying to make a difference, that's trying to do things a little bit differently, and is wanting to grow your institution. All right. So once we finish the intake and we really understand, like, where are we now? Because that's the goal of an intake process, to understand where are we now. Then the next step is to understand, like, all right, well, now that we get where we are, where are we going? And there's two types of perspectives that I like to lean into in this moment. You have impact related goals and you have income related goals. Again, you have impact related goals and you have income related goals. I always focus on the income related goals first, because then it leads us into the impact related goals. It's so much easier, in my opinion, for people to talk about money and how much money they want to make rather than the difference that they want to be able to create, because the money will allow us to be able to create that difference. Okay. So number one, she communicated, and I gave some examples. I said secure $250,000 in new grant funding. Number two was launch a new recurring donor program with 100 supporters. Number three was build 2 sponsorship partnerships with corporations. And then number four was increased earned income from services by 20%. Now, these are income related goals. But what we realized is that she didn't know. She was like, I have no idea. And that's okay. And many of us that are even listening into this or watching this feel that way. Like, look, I don't even know what I want to be able to generate, because one of the things that I tell them is, what are the top 3 to 5 income related goals you want to achieve within the next 12 to 24 months through your organization's work? And don't just throw out arbitrary numbers. Don't just say, I want to make $250,000 this year if you've never done it. Don't just say, I want to make $1 million this year. Like, what is this going to? If you had that $1 million, do you even know what it's going to, where the money is going to be allocated, and how you're going to be able to best utilize those resources to be able to create change, to be able to create transformation, and to be able to create impact within the work that you're already doing? And if you don't have an answer, then maybe we need to use one of the examples that I gave. So what she did is that she said, I want to launch a recurring donor program with 50 supporters. And I love it. I celebrated her. I said, all right, that's a start. Then I asked the question. I said, well, what are they donating to? She was like, educational resources. I was kind of looking at her like just a little bit confused. And she was like what? And I said, I want you to repeat what you just said. And I said, I want you to look at me as a donor and repeat it exactly how you said. And then she got midway through and she stopped. And I said, we have to build intentional programming in order for us to be able to get these donors to be able to invest in it. And then I asked the question. I said, what does your transformation cost? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, what does your transformation look like? And she said, I don't know. And here's insight number one for you all today. A lot of us want to create more income. A lot of us want to be able to achieve more success. A lot of us, especially in the nonprofit space, educational space, we want companies and donors and all of these individuals to give us money. We have to first understand what transformation looks like, because that's the return on investment for our donors. If we cannot explicitly and specifically communicate the picture of what transformation looks like in a visual form, and we cannot quantify the cost of that transformation, then we will not be able to receive the information, the donation, and the support of people that are here to champion our mission. And that's just the harsh reality. I worked with an organization that is based in East Africa, and we were having this conversation. And they are working with individuals to be able to expose students to career opportunities that help them learn the skills and insights to be able to have access to additional career opportunities. Okay, hopefully I got that right. What I communicated, I asked him, I said, what is the cost of you running one student through this program, like from beginning to end? He said $1,000. Let's just use that number, $1,000. I said, okay. I said, so that's how I would pitch it. And I said, what does your transformation look like? And then he explained this long drawn out process and where the student is when they come in and where they are in regards to demographic information and the experiences that they're going through and where they are and the skills and the certifications that they're able to gain and walk away with. And I was explaining this to my colleague and my client a little bit earlier. And I was explaining this specific scenario. And then I use this as an example. And I said, now you're able to go to 10 people and say, I want you to sponsor this one student, because this one student came through our program. They were here. Now they're here through going through our process and our framework, or through these series of events, or these series of workshops, or this specific leadership program, or this 12-point plan that we took this individual through. And I want you to be able to sponsor. And with your investment, we'll be able to take another student in. But if you can make it $4,000, we'll be able to take 4 students through this program. Imagine if you did that with 10 people. Now you have 10 students. Imagine if you did it with 100. Now you have 100 students that just went through your program. Now you have 100 transformations and you have $100,000. for your organization. So we have to first understand, what are people donating to? And then what is the cost of your transformation? What is the cost? I want you to actually write these things down as an organization, and then ask yourself, well, what does that transformation look like from a time standpoint, from a capacity standpoint? And do you have the resources? Do you have the personnel? Do you have the systems? Do you have the processes in order to be able to fulfill that specific transformation in the way that you're promising? What will it require for you? Insight number 2, impact related goals. Once we understood that concept of recognizing the cost of transformation, recognizing the process of transformation, and recognizing that we have to have a powerful program or solution or service that we are offering in order for us to be able to garner the resources and the relationships and the support of other individuals, what happened? Now we're able to look at our impact related goals a little bit differently. Now the same individual that we were talking to that had no idea in regards to the programming, had no idea in regards to the services that they were offering, I asked a simple question. I said, can I help you come up with some goals that are more intentional, that are more specific, and that are more in alignment with your mission? Because remember earlier I said that she's working with individuals that are making $60,000 as a household income, that do not have the financial means to be able to take care of their health and wellness and all of these various things. So the first goal that we set out, I said, we're going to help in 1 year, 25 people get jobs. I said, do you believe that you could do that? She said, yes. I said, how? And then she said, well, we could work with NC Works in the school system and partner people with lunch aid positions, and then they can do that without degrees. And I said, I want you to just highlight what you said. I said, you know what you just did? You just niched down a little bit more. Now we're working with people that don't have degrees. Now we're working with people that don't have degrees, that have a household income of under $60,000, that have families. That's a different market than a single person. That's a completely different market than a degreed or graduate degree person that just is having trouble getting a job in this specific economy. So then I was like, what is the activity? Remember when I said activity has to equal your outcome? We all want goals. We all want to achieve things, but how does your activity align with the outcomes that you want to produce? So I asked her, I said, well, the outcome could be build partnerships with school systems and build partnerships with this specific organization that you were mentioning, but what does the activity look like? And then we wrote down a few things that she could implement and do right now. Then goal number two was, we are going to help in 1 year, 25 people save their first $1,000 and improve their credit score. And then I just simply asked, how are we going to do it? She said, well, I already have a partnership with Coastal Credit Union. I just jumped and I started clapping. I said, yes, we got it. So how are we going to do it though? What is the activity? And then we wrote down the activity. Third goal, we're going to help in 1 year, 25 people increase their confidence. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, she says, well, in my opinion, working makes the difference. Working to learn who they are, self-image are ways to build confidence, getting your hair done simply. And I was like, so how are we going to do it? And we wrote down the activity. So when I think about this same organization that had no idea, no clarity in mission, no clarity in vision, no clarity in values, no clarity in building programming, nothing. By the end of that, understanding the impact, understanding the cost of transformation, understanding the process of transformation, we were able to come up with clear goals. And then from this, now we focus on outcome vision. And this is insight 3. When you have clarity on your goals and on your vision, this allows you to be able to build intentional goals. This allows you to then create intentional outcomes. So what we decided to do is like, look, I want us to build an annual calendar. I want us to build an annual calendar on the specific events that are necessary, whether it's financial literacy workshops on a monthly basis, whether it's her signature pivot to power workshops on a quarterly basis, or whether it's establishing key partnerships for us to be able to produce these specific results. But here's a hack. Here's a quick hack. If you are new to the fundraising space, if you are new to the giving space, if you are new and you have not raised lots of money, here's one thing that I always give my clients. I tell them to build a Power 50 list. Who are 50 people that you know or have crossed paths with that can help to achieve the specific goals that we highlighted earlier? Who are they? Whether it's a gatekeeper, whether it's a school leader, whether it's somebody with money, with time, with treasure, with talent. Who are the people that can help you achieve the specific organizational goals that you wrote down a little bit earlier? And I want you to write it down. And I want you to build a spreadsheet of first name, last name, company name, title, email, and phone number. See, once we do this, once we understand the back end, deep dive work, and once we recognize how far off we are from actually being able to increase our capacity as an organization, then we start doing the real work. So once she recognized that, look, I'm not ready to start receiving funds. We don't have personnel, we don't have process, we don't have systems. Well, let me focus first on building my list. Let me focus first in building a calendar. Let me focus first on getting consistent and alignment with the actual activities and experiences that I'm creating as an organization that I can be able to implement. That's where we need to focus. So this is my takeaway for anybody that's listening. If you are a nonprofit leader, if you're an executive director, if you are someone in higher learning that needs some strategy on how to secure gifts more effectively and scale your fundraising efforts, I want you to take some time and I want you to book a discovery call with us. Even if it's just a conversation, even if we can just unpack some of the things that you're doing so that we can be able to help you create a more intentional impact, I want you to schedule a call. And if you are somebody that's just ready to move forward, send me a DM. Send me a DM on LinkedIn and let's get this ball rolling. Ask your questions, comment below. And look, this is another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. If you liked it, this episode, if this is your first time here, like the episode, subscribe to the podcast and share this with someone in your world. I appreciate you. I'm your host, Kyle King. And one of the questions that we always ask our listeners is, what type of culture are you spreading? Remember this, the energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.